players deserve a lot of credit. Because unless you were with us, the energy that they put in to Thursday night, and it was every play. It was just really like a old-fashioned pickup game in a way. You know, very few whistles, and the you know, could have been deflated. We didn't talk about it Thursday. We got home about 4:15. The only requirement that they had was they had to go to class, miss the game. And for practice yesterday, we watched film and we walked through about 6 different things. We walked. We didn't run. Brian Bingaman deserves a lot of credit. He stretched them out. You know, guys that play heavy minutes for us, he stretched them out. And I put on the board today, they have to respect. See, I think that young players today don't really, like, they don't pay attention to their surroundings. So I had to tell them that I'm putting my neck on the line because I'm going to go in here after the game and say, we didn't practice yesterday. And that they had to respect that by playing with a certain fervor. And I think except for a few instances in the start of the second half, we did exactly that. You know, we cannot give up 38 points. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves because the ball went in the basket. We did not defend with the same fire that we defended with in the first half.
Phil, they tied it up at 17, and then you really pulled ahead. Was it almost good to be in that situation where you were forced to really be in a tight situation and then pull away like that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was you know, it kept me thinking, you know, and I think a guy that didn't score that had an impact on the game was Evan Mashmeyer. Darius Quarles certainly had an impact on the game in the first half. So I still think it was the defensive end of the floor. You know, we got stops and we could get down the floor. Evan had a pass ahead 3 to Langston in the corner. You need that kind of energy. So I don't really think it was the fact that they tied the game. It was you know, we had to get to the next play. And that's what we're going to have to do the back end of the season. We have to play the next play and the next possession, and we do have to correct that because in the second half, you know, we run around a little giddy because you know, and they were some tough shots. So tough shots went in, and we didn't make as hard a transition as I would like.
Phil, you're able to put that kind of trust in them because they're a little more experienced than you?
Well, I told them that's a very interesting point there. Like, there are things that we do, like we guarded the ball screen 3 different ways. 2 years ago, if I had tried that, it would have been a car wreck. And there are some things that I can give to them, and I thought it was interesting. Like, they don't talk a whole lot, but when they came off the court for the pregame talk, Ron Roberts said something to Langston. Said, "You know, I never beat these dudes." So when they were freshmen, they lost to Penn. When they were sophomores, they lost to Penn. And I thought that's a good thing, and I used that. So yeah, there is a little bit more trust in them in doing some things, but I still think you have to explain to them. You have to tell them, "Hey, Coach really looking out for us. Look what he did for us," because they don't think that way. They think, you know what, cool, he's supposed to do this for me. You know, they're no different than anybody else their age. They're entitled to certain things. And Thursday going into Friday, they could have been entitled to, "Oh, I feel badly for you. You really tried hard. You know what? This whistle or that whistle might have got us Thursday night." But that's not the way I'm built. It's okay. What do we have to do? I put in my time. You know what I mean? I slept an hour. When I got home at 5 o'clock, I slept till 6 o'clock. Then I watched tape to prepare them, and I expect them to respond to that preparation. And for the most part, tonight we did.
When you came out, were you worried about the energy level coming out? Like, it seemed like the first 10 minutes, you guys got a little sloppy at spots.
Well, yeah, and that's why we had to use guys that had more. And I told them, and they'll tell you, the second word on our board in big letters, bigger than all the other words, was energy. Look, I'm calling it the way it is. We're older. We're older. Penn plays extraordinarily hard, but they're just not there experience-wise. So we had to bring energy, and we couldn't say, I left all my energy on Thursday night. You only get 30 chances here, so every night you get a chance. And in this building, and by the way, with that student turnout that we had, and think about it, what did they announce in attendance?
Sellout.
Seriously. Right, they're 3 and 13, and it's the building. It's the building. People want to be in this building. They'll bitch and complain about where they can't park, but they want to be in this building.
So assuming one of those guys early was Darius, and this 3 straight games, he's giving you good minutes. Can you just talk a little bit more about what he's giving you, not just tonight, but in these last 3 games?
Well, you know, like people have asked, well, what about that? What about that? And I'll say, what about practice? And because he has practiced well, and he has stayed with it in practice, and his teammates deserve a lot of credit. Like his closest friend is CJ, and he rooms with Langston. They've kept him up. But because he's practiced well and even then, there was a play at the end. He had a charge. He jumped out of the way. You can't do that as a junior. That's just not acceptable. But because he's practicing with confidence, then he can play with confidence. And he hasn't dropped his head and said, oh, I started for 2 years, and I started last year, we won 20 games, and why can't I play, and that kind of thing. So, because of his practice habits, he's played well in games the last 3 games.
Do you think that was the problem? Earlier in the year, was he dropping his head because he wasn't starting? Or?
No, he wasn't practicing well. So, you'd have to ask him, were you not practicing well because you weren't starting? I can't really worry about that. I can only worry about this game and how can we win this game. And the guys that we were putting on the floor in November and December gave us the best chance of winning those games.
I know you only think ahead to now Wednesday night, I guess, it's Bonaventure, but the way that this year has gone so far, you almost think your margin of error here is very thin if you're going to make a big run at this.
No, our margin of error is thin because our margin of error is thin. We didn't really execute that well tonight.
Right.
We still turned the ball over 13 times. So the beauty in this is that we have reason to practice. And people have to understand.